60, 70, or 80 years old, walking less? Try doing these 5 things instead. Have you noticed something different lately? The way your body moves, or rather how it doesn't move quite like it used to? Maybe getting out of bed in the morning feels like a task that requires a little more effort. Maybe your once brisk walks now feel slower, heavier, or maybe, just maybe, you've started accepting that this is just how aging works. But what if I told you that's not entirely true? Aging doesn't mean surrendering to weakness or fading energy. You don't have to wake up feeling tired or struggle with stiffness that makes even simple movements a challenge. And here's the best part. You don't need expensive treatments or extreme lifestyle changes to feel better. In this video, I'll reveal 5 simple yet powerful habits that can help you restore your strength, mobility, and vitality starting today. These are not exhausting workouts or unrealistic diets. They're small, intentional changes that, when done consistently, can bring extraordinary results. But here's the real reason to stay until the end. The last 2 tips are absolute game changers. They could completely reshape how you move, how you feel, and how you live each day. Because this isn't just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years. So stick with me. Your future self will thank you for it. 1. Prioritize sleep, the foundation of good health. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "The greatest wealth is a peaceful mind." And what better way to nourish the mind than with sleep? Throughout history, sleep was seen as more than just a biological necessity. It was a sacred act of renewal. Native American tribes believed that dreams carried messages from the spirit world, guiding them through life's challenges. The Cherokee elders taught that sleep was not just rest for the body but a time for the soul to reconnect with its purpose. Even the great thinkers of the Founding Fathers era, like Benjamin Franklin, valued rest, famously saying, "Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." Yet in today's world we have been tricked into believing that sleep is something to sacrifice, pushed aside for the sake of productivity, entertainment, or worry. But what if I told you that neglecting sleep is silently robbing you of your health, your joy, and even your independence? Let me tell you a story. I want you to picture a man named Walter Hendricks, a strong, proud man. The kind of man who built things with his own 2 hands, a World War II veteran, a husband, a father, and the kind of neighbor who shoveled your driveway before you even woke up. Walter believed in hard work and resilience. He was raised in an era where people didn't complain about being tired, they pushed through. "You rest when the work is done," his father used to say. And Walter took that to heart. For years he worked long hours as a machinist, raising 3 children with his wife Margaret. Every morning he woke up before the sun, fueled by black coffee and sheer determination. He never took naps, he never slept in, and he never allowed himself the luxury of rest. And for a while it worked. Until it didn't. Walter started forgetting small things, where he left his tools, the name of an old friend, whether he had taken his medicine. He laughed it off at first. "Just old age catching up with me," he'd say. But Margaret noticed the changes. His patience grew thin. The man who had once been the rock of their family became short-tempered, irritable, and easily overwhelmed. Then came the fall. One morning, after a restless night, Walter got up too quickly. His legs felt unsteady, but he ignored it. He had things to do. He took a step, and before he knew it, he was on the ground, a fractured hip, weeks in the hospital, months in rehab. The man who once stood so strong now needed a walker just to move across the room. Doctors told him something that shook him to his core. His years of sleep deprivation had weakened his bones, slowed his reflexes, and made his body more vulnerable to injury. His brain fog, his mood swings, even his high blood pressure, all connected to his years of neglecting rest. And that's when it hit him. All those years, he had believed that sacrificing sleep made him stronger, but in reality it had made him weaker. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, Walter thought about all the things he had missed. The mornings he could have spent waking up slowly, listening to the birds outside his window. The evenings he could have sat on the porch with Margaret, watching the sunset instead of falling asleep in front of the TV. He had spent a lifetime outrunning exhaustion, only to find himself trapped by it. But Walter wasn't a man who gave up, so he did something he never thought he'd do. He started listening to his body. He let himself sleep in a little later. He took short naps when he felt fatigued. He followed a nighttime routine, cutting back on caffeine and turning off the TV earlier, and slowly he started to feel like himself again. His mood improved, his memory sharpened, his body recovered faster, and one evening, months later, Walter did something that brought tears to Margaret's eyes. He left his walker behind, stood up on his own, and took her hand. Together they stepped outside onto the porch. The sun was setting, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. And for the first time in years, Walter felt at peace, because he had finally learned that true strength isn't about pushing through exhaustion, it's about knowing when to rest. Walter's story isn't unique. So many of us were raised to believe that rest is a weakness, that slowing down means giving up. But the truth is, if you don't listen to your body when it whispers, you'll be forced to listen when it screams. So, I ask you, how well are you treating yourself? Are you giving your body the rest it deserves? Or are you, like Walter, pushing through exhaustion without realizing the cost? I want to hear from you. What is your biggest struggle when it comes to sleep? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's start a conversation because your health, your peace, and your well-being matter. And if you found Walter's story meaningful, consider sharing this with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes, the greatest lesson in life is simply this: it's okay to rest. 2. Don't stay still, the hidden danger of sitting too much. The Greek physician Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, once said, "Walking is man's best medicine." He believed that movement was the key to a long and healthy life. Even centuries later, science continues to prove him right. In early America, life was built on movement. Farmers rose before dawn to work the land, shopkeepers stood all day tending to customers, and families walked miles just to visit their neighbors. Stillness was rare, and physical activity was a natural part of life. But today, something has changed. We sit in front of screens, in cars, at desks, and on couches. Hours pass by without movement. We've traded our strength for convenience, our mobility for comfort, and as the body sits still, it begins to weaken, slowly, silently, without warning. This isn't just a matter of fitness. It's a matter of independence. Let me tell you a story, one that might just make you think twice about how much time you spend sitting. I want to tell you about a man named Charlie Whitaker. Charlie wasn't always the man you see today, the one who struggles to stand up from his chair, whose legs shake when he walks, who sighs in frustration every time he drops something because bending down is a challenge. No, Charlie was once the strongest man I knew. He was a firefighter, a hero, who ran into burning buildings without hesitation. His legs were like steel, powerful, unshakable. He could climb ladders in seconds, carry people out of danger, and work for hours without feeling exhausted. But then, Charlie retired. At first it was wonderful. For the first time in decades he could rest. No more alarms blaring at dawn, no more racing through smoke-filled rooms. Just peace and quiet. So he settled into his chair, and he stayed there. At first he told himself he deserved the rest. He had worked hard his whole life. He had earned the right to take it easy. But something happened. The longer he sat, the more difficult it became to stand. His legs, once strong as tree trunks, began to weaken. His back arched, his balance faltered. Walking became exhausting, so he did it less. His world shrank. A trip to the grocery store turned into ordering everything online. A visit to the park with his grandkids turned into watching them play from the porch. A simple walk around the block turned into too much effort to even try. Until one day Charlie fell. Not in a fire, not in the line of duty, in his living room, reaching for the TV remote. The doctors told Charlie what he already knew deep down. His muscles had deteriorated, his bones had weakened, and his circulation had suffered, all because he had stopped moving. And that's when it hit him. He had risked his life to save others. But now, the biggest danger to his health was something as simple as not getting up. So, he made a decision. He wasn't going to let that chair take away what was left of his strength. It wasn't easy. His legs trembled the first time he stood without holding on to something. He felt unsteady and frustrated. But he didn't stop. Every morning he forced himself to stand up and stretch. Every afternoon he walked around the house, even if it was just for a few minutes. Every evening he took small steps toward reclaiming the strength he had lost, and slowly his body remembered. His balance improved, his legs grew stronger, his energy returned. He wasn't the same man he had been before, but he was moving again, and that meant everything. Charlie's story is one that too many people live without realizing it. Sitting too much doesn't hurt right away, but it steals from you, little by little, your strength, your mobility, your independence. So I ask you, how often do you get up and move? Do you take breaks throughout the day, or do you, like Charlie once did, let the chair hold you captive? It's never too late to change. Start small. Stand up every hour. Walk a little further today than you did yesterday. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Your body is your greatest tool for freedom, but only if you use it. So tell me, what's one simple way you can add more movement to your life? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story might just inspire someone else to stand up before it's too late. 3. Get sunlight, your body's natural energy booster. The great American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Live in the sunshine, swim the sea, drink the wild air." He believed that nature, especially the sun, had the power to heal the soul and invigorate the body. But even before Emerson's time, ancient wisdom taught the importance of sunlight. The Cherokee people believed that the sun was a sacred force, a giver of life, and that morning sunlight held powerful energy to strengthen the spirit. Our founding fathers lived in a time when people rose with the sun, worked under its light, and ended their days as it set, a natural rhythm that kept them strong and connected to the world. Today, we've broken that rhythm. We spend our days indoors, hidden behind walls and screens, disconnected from the very source of life itself. And while we may not feel the consequences immediately, the body never forgets. Let me tell you a story about a man who learned this lesson the hard way. His name was Henry Whitmore, and he had always been an outdoorsman. As a boy, he ran barefoot through the fields of Tennessee, his skin golden from the summer sun. As a young man, he worked on his father's farm, feeling the warmth of the morning light on his back as he tilled the soil. But life has a way of changing things. After retiring at 65, Henry moved to the city to be closer to his daughter. The farm life was behind him now. He settled into an apartment where days passed in artificial light. The sun he once bathed in now only touched his skin when he walked to the mailbox, and slowly his body began to change. His joints ached more than they used to, his energy faded, and worst of all, his spirit dimmed. His daughter noticed first. "Dad, you're not yourself," she said one afternoon, watching as he sat in the dim living room staring at the TV. Henry just shrugged. "I guess I'm just getting old," he muttered, but he wasn't just getting old. He was starving. Starving for the sun. One morning Henry woke up feeling dizzy. His legs trembled as he stood. The moment he tried to take a step, his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the floor. When he woke up in the hospital, the doctors had their answers. Severe vitamin D deficiency, brittle bones, weakened muscles. The diagnosis stunned him. How could this happen? He ate well and took his vitamins, but he had forgotten the one thing nature freely gives: sunlight. And then the real danger sank in. The doctor explained that without sunlight his bones had weakened, his immune system had slowed, and his mind had clouded. And the worst part? It had happened so gradually that he never even noticed. Sitting in his hospital bed, Henry thought about all the mornings he had wasted indoors, all the moments he had chosen the comfort of shade over the nourishment of light. He thought of his father, who had worked under the sun until he was nearly 80, still strong, still moving, still sharp-minded. And Henry made a decision. When he was discharged, he started small. The first morning home, he sat on his porch for 10 minutes, just feeling the warmth on his skin. The next day, he walked a little further, just around the block, letting the sunlight touch his face, his hands, and his legs. Within weeks, something changed. His energy returned, his bones grew stronger, his mood lifted, and one afternoon as he sat outside, feeling the golden glow of the sun sink into his skin, Henry smiled for the first time in a long time. He had found his way back to life. Henry's story is not uncommon. Many of us unknowingly rob ourselves of the sun's power, spending our days inside, unaware of what we're losing. But let me ask you, when was the last time you truly felt the sun on your skin, not just stepping outside to run errands, not just glancing out the window? I mean really feeling it, letting it warm your face, your hands, your heart. The sun is not just light, it is life. So I challenge you, step outside, let the sun do what it was meant to do, and tell me in the comments, when was the last time you truly soaked in the sunlight? Your answer might just remind someone else to do the same. 4. Strengthen your legs, simple exercises for stability. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, "It does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop." This wisdom rings especially true when it comes to our bodies, our strength, and our ability to keep moving. In the early days of America, our ancestors didn't have the luxury of stillness. They worked the land, walked miles to town, and relied on their legs for survival. Strength wasn't something they had to think about, it was built into daily life. But today our world has changed. Modern convenience has made movement optional, and the less we use our legs, the weaker they become, until one day standing up isn't as easy as it once was. Many don't realize this until it's too late. Let me tell you about a man who learned this lesson the hard way. His name was Frank Dawson, and for most of his life he was strong as an ox. Frank had worked in construction for 40 years. He climbed ladders, carried heavy beams, and spent long days on his feet. His legs were his foundation, solid, steady, unbreakable. But retirement has a way of changing things. When Frank stopped working, he stopped moving. At first it wasn't intentional, he simply had no reason to get up as often. The long hours of standing, walking, and lifting, all of it was gone. He still went for the occasional stroll, but most of his days were spent sitting, and he never thought much of it. Until the day his legs betrayed him. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Frank was sitting in his recliner, watching an old western. He got up, just like he always had, but this time something was different. His legs felt like strangers beneath him, his knees buckled, his balance wavered. Before he could catch himself, he was on the floor. It took 40 minutes before his wife Helen got home and found him. He had no serious injuries, but the damage had already been done. And the doctor's words were a punch to the gut. "Frank, your muscles have weakened. If you don't start strengthening your legs now, you'll be at serious risk for another fall, one that might not be so lucky." Frank sat there in shock. How did this happen? He had always been strong, but his strength hadn't disappeared overnight. It had faded little by little, in the silence of stillness, and that realization scared him more than anything. Frank wasn't one to give up, so he made a choice. He wasn't going to let his legs dictate the rest of his life, not without a fight. His doctor gave him a simple plan: chair squats, standing up and sitting down slowly, using his legs. Leg lifts, raising each leg while seated, engaging his muscles. Marching in place, keeping his blood flowing, building stability. It seemed too simple at first. How could something so small make a difference? But he stuck with it. Every morning before breakfast, he did his exercises. Every afternoon, instead of staying in his chair, he walked around the house. Every evening, he took a few extra steps than the day before. And something incredible happened. His body remembered. The first week was hard. His legs ached, his balance felt shaky, but by the second week, he could stand up without hesitation. By the third week, he could walk farther without stopping. By the fourth, he felt like himself again. For the first time in years, Frank wasn't afraid of falling. And one evening, as he and Helen walked through the park, watching the sun set over the trees, she squeezed his hand and smiled. "I'm proud of you, Frank." He smiled back. "I'm proud of myself, too." Frank's story is one I see too often. People think they'll always have their strength until the day it's gone, but here's the truth. Strength isn't something you lose overnight. It fades when you stop using it, and the best part? You can get it back. You don't need a gym, you don't need fancy equipment, all you need is a few minutes a day. So tell me, what's one simple thing you can do today to keep your legs strong? Drop a comment below, let's start a conversation. Because staying strong isn't about age, it's about action. 5. Practice yoga or Tai Chi, the key to flexibility and longevity. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "Be still like a mountain and flow like a great river." The wisdom behind this is profound. True strength does not come from rigidity but from flexibility and movement. Even in early America, the pioneers and farmers understood this. They stretched their bodies with daily work, walked miles in the fields, and adapted to their surroundings. Their movement wasn't forced, it was a natural part of their existence. Today, however, life has changed. We move less, we stiffen more, and we wonder why our bodies feel heavier, tighter, and less capable. But what if I told you there's a way to restore that natural flow, to move freely again, without pain, without stiffness? Let me tell you a story about someone who learned this truth a little too late. Her name was Margaret Hayes. Margaret had always been a woman of action. As a young mother, she was constantly on her feet, chasing after children, cooking meals, and keeping a tidy home. Her energy seemed endless, her body strong. But time has a way of changing things. When Margaret hit her 70s, she started slowing down. She told herself it was normal. After all, isn't that what aging is supposed to be? Her knees ache when she stands for too long. Her back stiffened when she sat too long. Her hands trembled when she tried to reach too high. So she stopped trying. The walks became shorter. The movements became smaller. And soon, she stopped moving altogether. Margaret believed she was simply growing old, but her body knew the difference between natural aging and self-imposed stillness, and it would not let her ignorance go unanswered. One afternoon, Margaret stood up too quickly from her chair. A sharp pain shot through her back, so sudden, so overwhelming that she collapsed to the floor. She gasped for breath, unable to move. Her heart pounded as she lay there, helpless. When the paramedics arrived, they told her what she never expected to hear. "Your body has weakened, Margaret, not because of age, but because you stopped using it." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had done this to herself. Not time, not fate. She had stopped moving and her body had followed. Margaret had two choices: accept a life of limitation, fight for her freedom. She chose to fight. Her doctor recommended something Margaret had never considered before: Tai Chi and yoga. At first she laughed. "I'm too old for that nonsense." But wasn't that the same excuse she had used for everything else? So she gave it a try. She started small, breathing exercises, deep, slow inhales that calmed her body and mind. Gentle stretches, tiny movements that made her feel alive again, slow, deliberate motions, lifting her arms, shifting her weight, rediscovering control. It was humbling at first, but each day she improved. Her pain lessened, her balance improved, her confidence returned. For the first time in years, Margaret felt strong, not in brute force, but in control. And that kind of strength changes everything. One morning, Margaret stepped outside. For the first time in years, she walked down her driveway, without a cane, without help, without fear. The sun warmed her face, the breeze touched her skin, and she wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. Because she had almost given up, and now she never would again. Margaret's story is one that too many people live without realizing it. They let their bodies stiffen, their joints tighten, their independence slip away, one slow step at a time. And before they know it, they're stuck in a body that no longer listens to them. But here's the truth. Movement is not a privilege of youth. It is a gift that lasts as long as you use it. Yoga and Tai Chi aren't about being young and flexible. They're about staying strong, steady, and in control, no matter your age. So I ask you, when was the last time you truly moved? Not just walked to the kitchen, not just shift in your chair. I mean really moved, breathed deeply, stretched your arms, felt the power in your legs? It's never too late to start. Drop a comment below. What's one small movement you can add to your day? Your answer might just inspire someone else to take their first step. Aging is not about losing, it's about adapting. It's about making small choices today that will shape the way we move, think, and feel tomorrow. Whether it's a few minutes of stretching, a moment in the sun, or simply standing up a little more each day, every effort counts. Because this isn't just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years. So let me ask you, what's one small change you can make today to care for your body? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you found this video helpful, share it with someone who needs this reminder. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so we can keep this journey going together. Take care of yourself. Your future self will thank you for it.